Hey everyone, welcome back to bageltcg. I apologize in the delay since my last video. I know it's been about 2 weeks since I posted my previous video, but I recently joined a team in the last month or two called Galaxy Gaming. It's a Flesh and Blood team here in Jacksonville, Florida. There's currently 8 of us, so we can do drafting practice in-house. We meet twice weekly in person. Right now we're practicing a lot for the ProQuest season, trying to get us all a first place finish so that we can all go to the Pro Tour together. So I'll be going to 5 or 6 ProQuests in the next month or two. And so while I can't reveal like full deck lists and everything right now to what we're doing and all our testing, and I can't really tell you what each person is choosing, although each person kind of chooses different stuff based on their play style, I can go through what we found to be, after a lot of testing, the stronger heroes, what beats them, and kind of recommend what you should pick to be your hero in the ProQuest, or at least help you think through your thought process. I have my first ProQuest this Sunday, so exactly a week from today, which is Sunday. So I still haven't chosen my hero. I'm still kind of up in the air, but this is, I guess, for me as well to go through this and figure out what hero we're going to pick. So we're going to get started here. I'm also going to be going through the top 5 strongest heroes, right? So you can see that we have the strongest hero, in my opinion right now, as Viserai. Viserai got a lot of support in Everfest. I'd say all of his Majestics are playable in full copies. You know, all 9 of his Majestics in the deck and his 1 equipment, probably all playable, right? I think he's in a great spot, and I don't think he loses to much at all. It's actually kind of hard to think of counters. For each of these top 5, I'm going to be showing you a meta counter. And then if you like playing more Dark Horse heroes, I'll show you one of those counters as well. The meta counter is going to be out of the other top 5, right? So Dash is his meta counter. You need to be running at least two Signal Jammers, and that is how you're going to stop Viserai from beating you. If you can get both Signal Jammers out, that's 4 turns of Signal Jammer. And that should be able to stall him enough to secure the win on Dash. There's an Azalea build that's able to loop Red in the Ledgers and just do like dominated pumped Red in the Ledgers for like 4 or 5 turns in a row. And what that does is just makes it so Viserai can never play more than 1 action in a turn, and Rune Blades need to be playing a lot of actions, so he certainly isn't going to win that matchup. But honestly, outside of these 2 decks that I think he has a bad matchup into, I think he basically beats every other deck in the meta, which is why I think he's the best deck right now. I think these are probably the only 2 matchups that a Viserai would sit across from and be a little scared. There might be a few others. Viserai is not my deck of choice and not what I'll be going with. I'm just not as comfortable with him. He is probably the highest skill ceiling of any deck in the game. Like, I'd almost say that for sure. He's has so many different lines you can do. You get stuff with Rattlebones, Become the Arc Knight. You get so many choices and options. But I think he's the strongest deck. And if you want to beat him, these are the 2 options if you know you're going to see a lot of Viserai. Second best deck, we've got the Bravo star of the show. Some people call him Lottery Bravo. Some people call him Starvo. I guess I'll just call him Starvo because that seems to be the most popular one. So we have Starvo here. Starvo is really powerful. The thing is, sometimes you'll just not hit the lottery per se, and you won't be able to use his hero ability effectively multiple times in a row, and you'll just lose. But sometimes you'll hit it over and over and over, and you could probably win an event just getting lucky that day, right? So that's kind of where the power of this hero comes from. Whether that's good or not, you know, that he's not so skill intensive, not for me to say, but he is a hero that's quite easy, and you just pick him up, you just know the lines, you do those lines. He's not that hard to pilot at all. So he's an easy hero if you're new to the game and you just want to get some wins. He's going to beat a lot of the decks in the game. He probably has a 50-50 into Viserai, maybe slightly Viserai favored. He has pretty solid matchups in general. He's going to beat stuff, though, even that's a bad matchup like Viserai, if he just gets lucky, right? So I think it's really just based on you just need to roll well in terms of luck, right, with Bravo. But there's ways to mitigate that. Crown of Seeds helps a lot, lets you filter. You can play in certain patterns that make it so you pitch stack properly, things like that, right? So I think he's the second best deck, and I think he's in a great spot. his counters are Oldhim, who's able to be really defensive, and the amount of defense reactions that Oldhim can play makes it so that the dominate from Bravo isn't nearly as scary. Oldhim also can provide disruption back towards Bravo, and that's kind of where Bravo Star of the Show's weakness is, where Starvo's weakness is getting disrupted. He's trying to do a hand where he plays a 3-cost attack, pitches a blue, then swings with hammer, pitches a blue, and arsenals, right? So that's what his 4 cards are doing. And if you're getting disrupted by like Frostbite, like you can see both his counters here are Frostbite or a channel like Frigid or something, it just kind of ruins his whole game plan. He's not going to be able to count of seeds off through a channel like Frigid or a Frostbite. He just can't do a lot when he's getting disrupted. So he's going to get kind of beat up by both of those 2 decks. But in general, he's going to have a good play against a lot of the field. Our third choice is Prism here. Prism got a lot of support with the new auras added. All of these 0-cost auras are super strong. I personally think Spectra should at least cost 1 or 2 resources, right? And the fact that they're just free Spectra makes it so hard for decks that are just, like a Guardian, like Oldhim and Bravo. Like their matchups got even worse into Prism, right? So her counters, I will say, though, have not changed drastically. And the increase of auras in her deck actually has made her blocking abilities worse. So while she has gotten stronger, even better into these go tall like control or aggro decks, she's actually a little weaker to the aggro decks that can rush her really fast, right? So her meta counter is going to be Dash. Dash has always been a hard matchup for Prism, and that's basically stayed the same. Dash gets to set up these pistols that go really wide, do a lot of damage, is able to block effectively Prism's attacks, and now her high octanes are even better, giving her action points so that Spectra won't stop her. So high octane turns just make it so Dash can completely blow out Prism right now. The Dark Horse counter is going to be Katsu, who is one of my favorite decks right now. I love my Katsu deck. I'll probably do a deck tech of that soon. And Katsu is able to just be super aggressive. He's able to rush down Prism so hard. If she just draws a few hands with auras and can't block, it's over. She's so dead. And the Kodachis allow him at the end of a combat chain to swing in and hit an aura, pop that, and just leave her completely defenseless. It's a super hard matchup for Prism, similar to Dash. But the thing is, this is kind of similarity with Prism to Viserai here, is that while Prism does have a bad matchup into these 2 decks, she generally has good matchups across the board. Like Viserai does, has mostly good matchups. Her Viserai matchup isn't horrible. Her other matchups, what is the last deck we just looked at? Her Starvo matchup isn't horrible either. So she's in a good place right now. Oldhim is our 4th place deck. Oldhim is kind of funny case, right? So Oldhim gets countered by a lot of the other top 5 decks, but the thing is that's basically all he loses to. So he does get countered by Viserai, Dash, and Prism. Those are going to all be hard matchups for him. OTK Viserai, Dash setting up, Prism setting up. He's basically going to lose almost all the time to all 3 of those decks. But then he doesn't really lose to anything else. Like, he has a pretty solid matchup into the entire rest of the field. So with Oldhim, you're kind of hoping to run into these lesser played decks and hoping to not run into the meta decks, because he loses to, he beats Starvo, but out of the other top 5 decks, he loses to like 3 of them, right? So Oldhim is actually hedging on either a lot of Starvos showing up or a lot of people not playing the meta. And in that case, he's going to beat a lot of the field, and it'll probably be a pretty easy day because he is just a really solid deck. He's only held down by the fact that the other strong decks that beat him are so strong right now. And in 5th place, we have Dash here. Dash is kind of in a weird place, right? She beats a lot of the other top decks. So you saw she beats Viserai. She beats all of the other top decks, I think. She beats Viserai, Oldhim, Prism, and Starvo. Or sorry, except Starvo is what I was meant to say. She beats 3 of the other top decks, but Starvo is just a horrendous matchup for Dash. Like, Starvo is going to just smash Dash almost every time. You need to get really lucky or have the Starvo get really unlucky to win that matchup. So if you're bringing Dash to an event, you just have to hope that you never run into a Starvo. And if you can avoid the Starvos, then you're probably okay. You do beat, like I said, you beat Oldhim, Prism, and Viserai, so you beat all the other top decks, and you're probably in a great spot in that sense. You just need to like bob and weave through the Starvos. Her Dark Horse counter is kind of what it's always been. She's always had trouble into Bolton. He's able to, almost always get off his ability because Dash plays like all attack action cards for the most part. So his ability is able to get off really consistently. She can't set up because he's really aggressive. Another Dark Horse counter is Rhinar, and that's true to an extent, but she actually doesn't have that awful of a Rhinar matchup unless they just like Arc Smash you super easy. But Bolton is like her actual counter, and she does lose to like Katsu as well. She loses to these really aggro decks, which is why she was less popular during Briar, because Briar was able to beat her really consistently. So that's kind of where Dash is right now. Like she beats a lot of the other top decks, but then she loses to Starvo and then all these other aggro like Dark Horse decks. Now I'm going to kind of quickly go through why these Dark Horse decks are Dark Horse decks, right? Because they might beat some of the decks in the field, but they actually just lose in general to most of the top 5, right? So Katsu, for example, is going to beat Dash and Prism, but then he loses to Oldhim, Starvo, and Viserai, right? And 2 of those are pretty convincingly. Like, I don't think he's going to usually beat Oldhim or Viserai. He might sometimes beat Starvo, but what keeps these Dark Horse decks down is that they are losing pretty consistently to the other top 5 decks, even if they beat a few of them. And while you might say, oh, Oldhim is like that, because I did say Oldhim loses to most of the top decks, the difference is Oldhim is that he doesn't really lose to anything else, while Katsu will lose to some of the other Dark Horse decks. Lexi, you're going to see this with the other Dark Horse decks, is that they basically beat one thing out of the top 5 and then lose to the rest, right? So Lexi beats Starvo, loses to everything else. I just showed you Katsu. Bolton beats Dash, probably loses to everything else. And then Azalea was supposed to be one of these slides, but Azalea is the same as Lexi's, probably why I didn't make her own slide. It's because Azalea also is going to beat Viserai and maybe Starvo, and then lose to everything else. So, this is our last slide. I spoke really fast. I apologize if my speaking is too quick. I get really excited when I talk about Flesh and Blood. I talk really fast in general, and I guess I'm trying to rush through this video, which I don't need to. But now's the time for me to slow down and just kind of talk through what we should be picking. So I think it's always best just to stick with the mainstream and just find out what's best there, right? So either do that or picking a Dark Horse deck, right? But I think Dark Horse decks have trouble where they can only beat specific matchups, and they're only really good when the field is just overwhelmingly that deck, right? So if the field is like 80, not 80, that's absurd. If the field is like 40% Viserai, then maybe you go Azalea, and that's a safe pick. But unless it's that high quantity, it's not really worth going it, right? So that's kind of where we're at. And why I don't think picking a Dark Horse deck is necessarily the right choice right now. The field actually, the meta is pretty wide open. Everfest has been solid so far, I think, for the meta. Nothing looks absolutely busted. These are kind of the 5 choices we have in terms of what I think are the 5 strongest decks. Obviously, there's other good decks, right? And I'm not saying these are your only options. These are just what I would recommend you choose from if you want to pick the strongest heroes, right? If you just want to play the strongest hero with the best matchups, I would pick Viserai. If you want to pick a hero that kind of autopilots a little and can win an event very easily but also lose just as easily, I'd pick Starvo. If you want to pick a deck that's going to make you put in some work but give you really good results, and only really lose to some more Dark Horse decks, I would pick Prism. If you don't think your local meta has a ton of these top 5 decks, I would pick Oldhim. And if you think that your meta is going to be less aggressive and more of these top 5 decks, I would pick Dash, right? I think all 5 of these have merit. I do apologize for the yawning, by the way. When I talk fast, I also start running low on air. But yeah, I think these 5 decks all have merit. I don't think any would be incorrect to pick. I personally don't love playing Prism or Viserai. They're just not my playstyle per se. And Oldhim I'm kind of with. So I will either end up on Starvo, Dash, or a Dark Horse deck. I've been really liking Katsu lately, and I think he's great. So those are kind of my 3 choices. I'm going between right now is Starvo, Dash, and Katsu. Katsu was who I won the Road to Nats with, or sorry, got top 4 at my Road to Nats with and qualified for nationals. So he's still pretty near and dear to my heart. But yeah, that's what I've got today. I will be putting some more videos out soon. I do apologize for the delay between my last video and this one. Just been doing a lot of practice with my team, trying to get ready for this ProQuest season. Hopefully some deck text to come, some tier list, even though this is kind of a tier list already, but more of those to come. So thank you guys for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, comment. I would love some discussion in the comments below about what you guys are going to be playing, what you agree with in the video, what you disagree with. I love that kind of constructive criticism and commentary. So what do you agree with, what you don't agree with, what you're going to be playing, what you think is good right now, what did I not cover that you think is good right now, what did I get wrong, anything like that. I love talking in the comments. I might throw some version of these deck lists in the comments, or at least bring them up soon. Maybe my next video I'll go through deck lists for these 5 decks. I'm not going to go through exactly our deck list, but I could go through something similar. I'll probably do a Katsu deck tech soon. Lots of stuff to come. And if you want support Galaxy Gaming, I'll leave a link to our team page. There's not really anything you can do to support other than just like, give us good energy. We don't have like merch or anything. We're mostly just an organization to better ourselves, so that we can compete and do well there. But if you see anyone wearing a Galaxy Gaming hoodie or anything, give us a shout out. We love to see people, meet them, talk to them about Flesh and Blood. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.